And in line with Afghanistan's new government's diplomatic push for support and recognition, a high-level Taliban delegation is in Turkey's capital for talks. Afghan's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abdul Qahar Balkhi says issues of mutual interest, including aid, migration, air transport and trade, are the key focus. Turkey, a member of NATO, still maintains its embassy in Afghanistan even after Western countries withdrew theirs following the Taliban takeover. Turkey says it will only work fully with the Taliban if it forms a more inclusive administration. And for a deep look at this talk between Taliban leaders and the Turkish government, a professor of international law, Ademola Abasa, joins me now via Skype. Good to have you join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
It seems as if Turkey is breaking with the West in being very direct in terms of these talks. We also know that Turkey left its embassy open in Afghanistan. What do you make of this very direct approach coming from Turkey?
Well, thank you very much once again for having me. Well, we shouldn't be surprised because, number one, as we've seen, if there's a crisis in Afghanistan, Turkey is going to get a lot of heat. Already, Turkey has a lot of refugees from neighboring countries. From Syria, they have almost 3 million from Syria and other places. So Turkey is duly worried that if you don't engage with the Taliban, if they have to start shooting their way through recognition and stuff like that, they are going to take the heat. The West is not going to take the heat. US is very far from Turkey. Britain is very far from Afghanistan. Britain is very far from Afghanistan, and so is France. So Turkey's direct approach is very, very important. And number two, don't forget that Turkey is a key NATO ally, is a key NATO member in that particular region, and is doing a lot of work for the West. So whether the West likes it or not, they are going to eventually have to talk to Turkey and toe the line that Turkey is suggesting. So it's a very, very important and strategic direction that Turkey is taking.
And you are a professor of international law. Talk to us about this, because Turkey says, look, we're talking about engagement and not recognition. But is it possible to have one without the other? Can you engage without legitimacy?
Absolutely fantastic question, Precious. Look, in international law, recognition of a government, I said earlier on, is different from recognition of a state. There's no doubt that Afghanistan is a state in international law, fact. Now, there is no doubt that that state now has a government. Now, the government is the Taliban. In international law, you have what you call a de jure government and a de facto government. A de jure government is a government that is brought in constitutionally in a country. That is not the Taliban. But a de facto government is somebody who has not been brought into power through legitimate processes, through a constitutional process, but nonetheless, who exercises effective control over the majority or all of the country. Now, you ask yourself a question. If you apply the test of effective control over the whole country or substantial part of the country, the Taliban passes that test. It's just like when you talk about Nicaragua and the Sandinista in Nicaragua in those days. Yeah, they were not recognized, but they operated in large part of the country of Nicaragua. So the world deal with them in those moments as a de facto government. The same thing in Liberia during the Liberian crisis, if you remember. Charles Taylor's faction, the NPFL, controlled at a point in time the majority of that country, and only left to Samuel Doe's government the Monrovia, which is a capital. So again, that was a de facto government. So the long and short is that Taliban is a de facto government, and in international law, you can recognize a de facto government without recognizing the government itself, the state itself, or their government itself. You can do business with them without necessarily conferring recognition of such nature with them. So you will deal with them as a de facto government, but you don't recognize them as a de jure government. So really, they are in power. They're in power. They have the control. So deal with them on that basis. But you don't confer any constitutional authority on them, which is the jury. So you can recognize. And
that would mean that, because they are also asking for, during the UN General Assembly, they did ask for a representation, asking for the current ambassador to be returned, and then for them to nominate someone. A move like that would be legitimizing the group, if I'm correct. And then I also just wanted to take it with this, because Turkey is saying, look, we want you to allow girls to go to school. We also want you to have more women in government and get them to work. But this Taliban hasn't shown commitment to any of this even before now. So what are the guarantees that they are going to do this just because they want some level of recognition?
Well, thank you very much, Precious. And I'm happy you brought me back to talk about this. Remember the last time I had to talk about days, I said that I'm happy you used the word guarantee. I said that the world, nobody could guarantee that the Taliban will not go back to their old ways, despite their words, that those words might turn out to just be empty words. That is what is practically happening in some areas of Afghanistan now. Public hangings have taken place and are taking place. The beating, are they doing there, excluding women from work, and so all these things are coming back, which I predicted then that they will eventually come back. But here is the thing: we are in a catch-22 situation. Do we say, look, we are not going to recognize them, but we are going to give them the aid they need? We have to protect the women and the children anyway who are suffering.
Absolutely.
Are we going to say we are going to hold tenaciously? Are we going to hold tenaciously to the principle of recognition and say, no, we do not recognize you simply because you have not come in constitutionally? Then women and children and others will be dying in that country. So the UN will not sit in judgment naturally over a member state by saying, well, you have not come in constitutionally, we're not going to give you a position. But then you ask a question, who controls the UN? You have the Permanent Security Council, the 5 powers. If they do not recognize Afghanistan, there is no way UN is going to be able to give them, a seat, give them a recognition in the system.
And because you said that, you talked about the women and children. Of course, there are calls for humanitarian aid because of the humanitarian crisis now in that country. But the Turkish foreign minister, that's Mevlut Cavusoglu, is also saying, look, you need to open up these accounts that were frozen in the Western countries so they can pay salaries. But that's also a slippery slope. It's like putting money in the hands of the Taliban, and that's what the West is scared of. But at least, shouldn't they show some level of commitment, especially in dealing with terrorism in that country before? Shouldn't that be a step before any of this happens?
Well, Precious, it's a very important question. Yes, traditionally and orthodoxly, we will say, look, don't reopen the account, don't unban the account. Let's hold them accountable to what they have done and what they are likely to do, and let them give us guarantees before they can do it. But the truth is, the West is not going to be able to achieve that. And you have to think very carefully about the plight of children and women and those who are vulnerable in that country. The question is, do you want to hold tenaciously to constitutionality and say we don't want to deal with them at all? Now, here's the catch, Precious. If you do that, then you are going to go back to 1989. When after the Soviet war with them, you abandoned Afghanistan, and what was the consequence? One of the many consequences was 9/11 in the US. And as I speak today, intelligence has it that a lot of militants, about 2,000 of Islamic State militants, are already massing in the northern part of Afghanistan. Because don't forget that Moscow, Russia is going to be holding a talk, international talk, which is going to be, represented by the US, by China, and others, in Moscow just next week. So they're already massing up in them. So whether we like it or not, Afghan is going to do some of his bad ways. But here is the catch. You have to meet them on a common ground. You have to meet them in the middle. You cannot tell Afghanistan today, we will only do ABC to you if you don't go back to your old ways completely. They won't forget the old ways overnight unless we are pretending, unless the West is pretending. They can't do that. So it's a question of, okay, we are not going to give you all your money. If you have $10 million here, we are going to allow you a quantum to allow you to be able to give food and this and that to those who need it. We're going to allow you to have drugs to come into your country. But if you slam sanctions on the entirety of the system, you are hurting people. You are not hurting Afghanistan. You're not hurting the Taliban who have the best food. Have you seen the kind of guns that are parading? They are brand new AK-47, AK-74, and everything. They have all the resources they want. They have all the materials they want. You are hurting the population. So what the West need to do is to be smarter in the way they apply their sanctions, is to target those that really need to be hurt. And if they want to do that, they know where to go. So just the traditional way, just block the account and this and that. Don't, because you are going to have some countries, not in the West, that will say, look, they blocked your account in the West, don't mind them, we will give you loans, and that will happen. Very soon.
And we see that a lot of countries like Pakistan, China, even Russia, and Turkey now are willing to partner, probably just as a spite to the US. But I'm sure the West is monitoring some of these the talks in Istanbul and seeing the level of commitment that will come from the Taliban. Always great to have your insight, Professor of International Law, Ademola Abasa.